Greetings. This is Jennifer Kennedy, the lead for compliance and quality at QuAPI, and welcome to QuAPcast. So if you were with us as a home health or a hospice provider, we regaled you with the top 10 survey deficiencies for 2025 for both of those spaces. And now, today, we are going to talk about the top 10 deficiencies for DME in 2025. So I am so pleased to be joined by my two colleagues, Kim and Shannon. And Shannon, I know you've been with us one or two times before with Kimski and myself. Why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself and say what you do here at QuAPI?
Sure. I am a Senior Director of Accreditation with QuAPI. I've been with the organization for about 5 years, and one of my primary responsibilities is to oversee the DMEPOS organizations for which we accredit.
Great. And Shannon, you are our QuAPI guru for all things DME. So we're going to, no pressure on you during this podcast today.
I second that.
Yeah, I don't like that word. You're
kidding, right? And of course, we've got Kim Skian. She is the VP for accreditation, good friend, colleague. I don't know. What else are we? Sisters from another mother, maybe? I don't know.
Kind of feels that way sometimes. And we commiserate together on any of these regulatory changes and challenges. So, but we're, in it together.
Absolutely. So, we're going to go ahead and get going with talking about the top 10 DME deficiencies. But I just wanted to put out there that with such big changes in the DME space and such a focus on DME from CMS, I think it's like more important than ever that suppliers and providers take heed to what the top 10 deficiencies are. And I'll throw it out to Kim and Shannon for their thoughts on that.
Sure. Thanks, Jennifer. I'll start and then pass off to Shannon for her expertise. But just to sort of lay the groundwork, DME has been increasingly in the spotlight with CMS for quite some time, both from a potential fraud and billing standpoint, but also from a regulatory concerns about health and safety. So we've seen over the past year or so, just as a DMEPOS deemed accrediting organization, where CMS has increased some oversight and some processes and practices that would be more visible, if you will, to an AO than to the providers. And this doesn't count any billing audits. This is about survey. But with the fiscal year 2026 home health final rule, there were significant changes to DMEPOS, not just the related to the competitive bidding and some of the other areas that Shannon is fully well versed in, but most importantly, certainly impacting us, were the changes to the AO oversight or accreditation organization oversight and providers. So notably increasing surveys from every 3 years to every year. So annually every year, or annually every DME provider needs to be surveyed. And there's a lot of discussion and development around the sampling methodology, in terms of CMS wanting to make sure that AOs are surveying, not just one, if an organization has multiple entities, but, one or the same organizations over time, as they used to look at heat zones, for example, really making sure that there's a representative sample of all of the, providers. So it's going to be a greater chance that each location will be surveyed, at least once. During the a regular cycle. But if you're a single provider, it's annual surveys. And what that means is, if you haven't paid attention to survey readiness and these top 10 deficiencies, then you really need to start to put together a survey readiness program, you know me, every service line I ever speak about, I talk about survey preparedness and conducting mock surveys, but also being aware of the CMS DMEPOS quality standards, the CHAP standards, if you are CHAP accredited, and what those key areas are that you can, to the best of your ability, control. Because the other piece that's important here is it's not well defined with DMEPOS, where home health and hospice you have standard level deficiencies, condition level deficiencies, and then immediate jeopardy and termination. With DMEPOS, they have it's really up to the AO, but the one thing that CMS is looking for is if the AO determines that a plan of correction is recommended versus denial of accreditation, the AO must include in their report to CMS the rationale for the POC versus denial. So there's a lot more scrutiny in addition to validation visits. So a lot of eyes on DME from the regulatory standpoint, which is why what Shannon's going to talk about with the top 10 deficiencies is so important.
Yes,
Thanks, Kim.
you're correct.
Go ahead, take it away.
Well, I mean, site visit readiness is a must these days, right? We've always preached site visit readiness. However, now with the annual accreditation cycle, it is more important than ever. And each organization should really focus on their quality assurance and performance improvement programs to ensure, that they are monitoring their own internal processes and identifying opportunities for improvement. And I think that's really going to be key to any organization's, self-readiness.
So
Absolutely.
Thank you so much for that great setup. When we look at that top 10 list for 2025, Shannon, is there anything that pops out to you as a surprise or anything that doesn't surprise you for that matter?
No, I think in looking at it, it's pretty common across the board, especially even when Jennifer, you did a great job putting together that 3-year history perspective. And really all it does is it's really the same top 10. They just move around, right? A little bit from year to year,
Right.
depending on the organization's focus. But really what this comes down to is implementation of organization policy and procedure. And I believe just from experience in operations is, it's, I won't say easy, but it's fairly, I believe, easy to establish policy and procedure. It's implementing it because, right, you have humans, you have human error, you have stressful days, you have all types of elements that will affect implementation. And so, again, quality assurance, we call it QuAPI, quality assurance performance improvement. That program, again, is key because that's how you audit and monitor your performance as an organization.
So one of the items, it was actually number 8, Shannon, is not a federal DME standard. It was actually a CHAP standard revolving around thou shalt have a compliance program. This is pretty new. In the last couple of years, we did implement or insert specific standards for compliance programs. I'm not surprised to see one of the standards there, and actually, I'm really glad that we inserted compliance program standards because looking at all of the scrutiny that is being showered upon DME, I think it's more important than ever that suppliers and providers have a compliance program. So, when you interact with providers, Shannon, and you're looking at post-survey stuff, when we talk about compliance standards and compliance programs, what comes to mind for you? The importance of it, or your thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, the OIG recommended years ago, right, that all healthcare organizations implement a compliance program. And if organizations go to the OIG website, they will find the OIG's compliance plan, right, for the year. And you can even pull it up specific to DMEPOS. So following the OIG's 7 elements, right, of compliance is really how CHAP formed, their recommendations for the compliance plan. That's where these standards are based. So again, following the OIG's compliance program, establishing that compliance officer and that compliance committee to oversee policy and procedure implementation, making sure that everything is applied across the board in fairness, as well as having that auditing and monitoring program to identify fraud and abuse. Doing that risk assessment annually to ensure that again, where your opportunities for improvement, where your risk lies as an organization. And that cannot be stressed enough, right? From a fraud and abuse perspective, CMS has come through with this final rule, and they tell us that the primary reason for that is fraud and abuse. So it's extremely important that organizations educate their staff, that they give their staff the power, right, to act and to report, and that they take those reports seriously, and that they investigate each report and validate the accuracy of that information.
I completely agree. I have to tell you, with all of the top 10, most of which surround health and safety, which is what we would expect to see in accreditation survey. CP7, I actually applauded the fact that it's here so that we can discuss it, because as Shannon pointed out, and you have as well, Jen, that the focus on fraud and abuse, and again, we are not government auditors, meaning we do not audit claims. We do not audit, for payment, but having the infrastructure, the importance of the infrastructure of a corporate compliance program, with that risk assessment is extremely important. And I applaud you, Jennifer, for having the foresight a few years ago to put this into our accredited service lines, because it has been important. It's even more important, and it's really a protection for the provider to have it in place.
Absolutely. And it's taken the compliance high road all the time, and that program helps you identify any kind of potential or real fraud and abuse, and helps you process it so that you're back in the zone of compliance that you need to be in, right? I'm going to put Shannon on the spot to talk a little bit about some of the key trends and suggestions that came out of that analyzation.
Sure. So the first one, we have PS1, which is specific to a safety program. And this safety program, I'd say this is probably the most commonly cited finding that we have for DMEPOS. But the safety program includes equipment, minimizing safety risks, infections, and hazards for staff and for patients. So this particular standard, would include things such as tank storage or tank transportation, cleaning the equipment, completing maintenance on the equipment, maintenance and repair, fire extinguishers, right, whether they're in the facility itself or on the delivery vehicles, and personal protective equipment. Those are just some examples of things that would go under this particular standard. So again, not surprising that it's the most commonly cited standard. Because again, all of those daily tasks, right, that surround DMEPOS, whether it's equipment or personnel or patient related, again, looking at infections, hazards, and risks for all of those. So that's definitely the most common standard. TB control plan. Again, organizations need to refer to their state regulation, right? Most states have specific regulation for TB. You can go to the health department website for most states and find those regulations. If the state does not have specific regulations, then you always want to refer to CDC guidance. But this particular standard at IC3 is specific to screening and testing of personnel. So you want to do that up on hire, and then annually thereafter. And again, that's screening and testing. So we know CDC changed their guidance a few years ago. But again, it's important. I think Jennifer's already mentioned that looking at policy and procedure, on a routine basis, right, to ensure that the policy, nothing's changed, right, that nothing needs revised specific to state regulations, CDC guidance, or federal guidance for that matter. But again, having that routine review and monitoring of those policies and procedures, whether you do that through your compliance committee, right, or your QuAPI committee, or however as an organization you determine to do that. But again, that review of regulation in alliance with policy is extremely important.
Looks like there were some documentation issues, sort of across the board. It's maybe the organization, did do what they were supposed to do, but they didn't document it adequately. So it didn't come through as them being compliant. So I see that as an area for improvement. And then, hand in hand with that is the oversight, the leadership oversight to ensure the document, not only is the process being followed and you're being compliant, but also is it being documented? All that sort of falls under that category as well. Anything to expand on that, Shannon?
No, you're right. I mean, documentation, organizations, a lot of times we see that they, during the interview process, right, we can determine that they maybe have identified an opportunity for improvement and that they have actually improved, like whether it's through patient satisfaction, record audits, whatever it may be, but they didn't document it. Or they provided staff training, but yet again, didn't document it. Or whether it's a staff competency. I mean, there's all kinds of things that organizations do, but they need to take credit, right, for what they do. Take credit for what they do, put it in black and white. Again, I know when I was in operations, staff I know that they got sick of hearing me say this, that basically if it's not in black and white, it did not happen, right? So if you didn't document it, then it didn't happen. You have no proof that you've done it. So organizations, again, pay attention and be sure that you document and take credit for what you're doing on a daily basis.
And you know what? I would just add on to that with for a one location provider, it's one thing to make sure that you have all of those processes documented, reviewed, all the policies, staff are trained, everybody is, to the best of your ability in compliance with demonstrating compliance with the standard. When you have a location or an organization that has multiple locations, you must make sure that consistency, that compliance, that implementation flows all the way to all of your locations, because you'll be they will be cited even if you have a wonderful policy, at the parent organization or at some of your primary locations. If you are surveyed at another location under that parent, then you will end up with, you will have findings. And sometimes that happens with change of staff, that or change in leadership. So really being attuned when you have more than one location, that everyone is really in the same readiness mode, if you will, and has the same understanding and everything is updated.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more. I just want to swing back to the oversight and documentation and competency. You mentioned that, Shannon. I was glad you brought that up. We can educate, but if we don't hold people accountable for what we're teaching them, that's an oversight issue. If we don't tell them when to document, how to document, etc., and not holding them accountable for that, then that's an oversight issue. So, it seems to me that, part of the, when you're looking at this at a bigger, picture, it has a lot to do with leadership and oversight, making sure.
Absolutely.
So, yeah.
Well, and I think one of the key things that we've seen routinely is organizations understanding the difference between orientation and training and competency, right? They're two different things. Competency is a skill assessment. It's where someone is actually observing personnel perform the skills, right, that they're going to be doing for patients, whether it's specific to equipment, patient instruction, maintenance, cleaning, whatever it may be. But it is a skill assessment. So it shouldn't just be a checklist that someone's just sitting and documenting and somebody else is signing off on. It's actually an assessment, an observation. And I think that's key, is for organizations to understand the difference.
Absolutely key, and couldn't agree more. Well, it looks like we're getting to the end of our time here together, so I wanted to ask each of you what your final thoughts were for our listeners today.
Well, I can certainly say from my usual general comment, you'll hear it every time, nothing replaces readiness, survey readiness, oversight, making sure that you have a plan to be able to review the standards in real time, whether it's your policies, your documentation, record reviews, ride-alongs, making sure that, you are looking at all of your documentation and tracking and competencies and training, as Shannon pointed out, at all levels of the organization. But the other piece I would add is the compliance program. The importance of having a compliance program in place that also is implemented in real time to really assist the DMEPOS organizations in particular in ensuring both regulatory and payment compliance, and certainly be able to demonstrate those efforts toward compliance to CMS should you be a subject of an audit or any other type of finding. So this is one time where I strongly recommend both, in this case with this environment.
Thanks,
Absolutely.
Kim. Shannon.
And of course, your compliance and your QuAPI committees, they should be working hand in hand, right? Smaller organizations, it may be some of the same people. Larger organizations, it will be different. But both of those have a role, right, in auditing and monitoring. And of course, the organization should be strategic, right, in their plan for auditing and monitoring, identifying their risks, and then auditing and monitoring for opportunities for improvement. And of course, when CHAP comes in, or any accrediting organization, then we're really an extension of that program, a third set of eyes coming in to identify opportunities for improvement for the organization. We see our organizations as our partners, right? And we want them to be successful. So again, as Kim has already said, maintaining that state of readiness. And as we have mentioned, document. If it's not in black and white, didn't happen.
I hear you. Well, shortly after I passed my nursing board, someone gave me a little plaque that said, on the 8th day, God documented. So
Amen.
A fellow nurse that gave me that, and I have had it ever since. I just wanted to mention some exciting tools that we are pushing out with the top 10 DME deficiencies. As I mentioned before, we're giving you the list, but we're also giving you an analyzation of that list with rationale for the standard, a key action list, as well as suggestions for performance improvement. And then we also this year developed a 3-year comparison grid for you that is comparing 23, 24, and 2025 top 10 DME survey deficiencies, again, with analyzation and overall impressions of the 3-year grid. So we're really excited to be able to push those out the door, and just let you know that there will be many more DME resources coming your way in 2026. So Kim and Shannon, thank you so much for talking DME with us today. And thank you to all of you for joining our Chapcast today about the top 10 DME survey deficiencies for 2025. So from Kim and Shannon and me and the entire CHAP staff, keep turning the corner on better performance, stay safe and well, and thanks for all you do.